Greetings all, Ferrariman601 here. Welcome to iRacing. As some of you know, iRacing has just released Season 2 for 2019. This, of course, is the latest in the regularly scheduled updates that iRacing bring to us from time to time, usually right after week 13 and the craziness that goes with it. But this one is a big one because for the first time ever, iRacing finally have a proper torque model for how the engines deliver their power or how they lose their power, depending on your perspective. For the last 10 plus years in iRacing, it was entirely impossible, no matter what you did, to stall your engine. Didn't matter. You just couldn't do it. The reason why you couldn't do it was because iRacing never had a proper clutch model or a proper torque model in terms of how each individual cylinder of the engine is generating torque. All of that has now changed thanks to this latest update, which of course comes whenever you come onto your iRacing client. You'll be prompted to update. You won't be able to run the sim unless you at very least install the latest system update. So here it is. We're at Pocono. We're running the international circuit, and we're going to have a quick run in the Dallara T12, better known as the Formula Renault 3.5, better known as the Renault World Series car. Unfortunately, this one doesn't really race anymore, but I just want to show you how you're going to be able to take advantage of these new driveline characteristics in iRacing. You see here on this card, bottom right, driving aids. Shift aid, that's the first option here on the top left of that driving aid section. You want to make sure that you select none. Anti-stall with clutch. This is basically what iRacing used to do. Whenever you went slow enough, it just automatically cut the clutch in whether you were hitting it or not, and thereby it prevented you from stalling the engine. If you hit none, now it is truly all you, all on your own, no automatic clutch coming in, no anti-stall systems coming in, just very intrusively and in my opinion diminishing the overall experience of iRacing. Now this does not really change gearbox behavior. Still, in most H-pattern cars in iRacing, it is still possible to do the odd pre-select thing where you're in a gear and then you move your stick into the next gear up, and then you're able to change up just by lifting the throttle a little bit with no clutch. That, unfortunately, is still a characteristic that we have, but this is a good start. We're able to stall the engine if we so want. Of course, in cars like these with sequential or paddle actuated boxes, we've got a paddle box in this car quite obviously, you're not going to notice that because you won't be using the clutch under normal operation once you've got it going. But just want to show you how this works. In addition, we also have new sounds on many cars. We have proper ignition switch sounds. When you flip the car on, you'll hear a little click from the ignition. You'll also get a starter noise when you hit the starter to fire the thing up. So right now we're switched off. I'm going to switch it on. And you hear a little click there. You also hear the fuel pumps come on. Listen very closely. You might not be able to hear this on the video, but just listen closely. I'm going to switch the car off. And you hear the fuel pumps spool down as they come to a stop. I'll switch the car back on. And you hear that whirring noise behind me. Those are the fuel pumps coming online. And I've got to say, that's immersion from an audio standpoint. Of course, we've got the oil pressure alert here across the screen. We'll start the engine. Now, listen to this. Yes, you hear a starter come online as we fire the engine up, and then, of course, the engine fires. We're at idle speed now of 2441. Engine still responds as it has done previously. Of course, that shouldn't change, but look at what you don't see in the bottom left of the steering of the screen display there. Clutch trace. Normally, if you have auto clutch enabled or the anti-stall enabled, you'll have a clutch trace like this as if you were on the pedal. But now, come off the pedal at a stop, and the clutch trace goes away. The clutch is fully engaged, and I have 100% control of it. And you can even see the engine RPM deviate a little bit as I come off the clutch very quickly, even though we're in neutral. There you go. It drops almost 500 RPM before it comes back up to idle. Very cool. Which means if I just drop this car into first gear, as you might be accustomed to doing, yep, it stalls, and it even lurches forward a little bit, and then it settles between the gear teeth there in first gear, as we now are. Yep, we've stalled it. You couldn't do that previously. Now you can. It's a big deal. fired back up. We will do a normal type pull away here. Actually, we'll do a race start. There we go, first gear, car lurches forward a bit. And off we go. And of course, once you are up to speed, and in these sequential cars or these paddle shift cars, you don't use the clutch normally when you're underway anyway, so all of that is normal. But that initial pull away feels different, and it is different from a procedural standpoint. It is now much more realistic, something that I very much appreciate, and I've got no tire temperature and no brake temperature, and of course, yep, that's all gone very pear-shaped in a hurry. But look at this. Show you how to pull away. There you go. You've got to be very careful with the clutch. Of course, it's got a very fierce bite on a cart like this. But once we get everything up to temperature, it will just hunker down and work as advertised. Again, all those driveline characteristics are basically the same as before. It's just the initial pull away that is now very different. And all of that, of course, is going to come into play when you have events that have standing starts, of course, because now you can't rely on the computer to do it for you. And I believe that in private leagues, the league managers at their discretion can either enable or disable auto clutch and anti-stall and things like that. It should also be noted that cars that in reality do have an anti-stall system still have that emulated, but that is now passed over into the car's own electronics. It's not something that the sim is emulating externally, if you will. That's all now authentic per the actual car. You still get things like downshift protection built in to the car's ECU as well, so you don't have to worry about that. But really, I've got to say, little additions like this, just polishing what is already an absolutely great sim, arguably the greatest currently on the market, despite now being on the market for 10 years. Little refinements like this, and I mean, we could argue all day long as to whether or not they have come at a reasonable time. I mean, I think 10 years is pretty long in terms of getting proper driveline dynamics, but it's here now. And little details like these are definitely what make a sim feel a lot more authentic. And all the same, because of that added authenticity, it adds a little bit more of a challenge. And of course, in terms of immersion, it only can improve it. iRacing, I believe, has had some of the best immersion out of any racing sim, either at the time when it came out in 2008 or even now in the next generation of sims that have come out. So again, iRacing just continuing with these little tweaks and little polishing changes, just making themselves even better. Of course, we're all really waiting for the new damage model, which maybe or maybe not will come out later this year. It does show some promise in some beta test videos that they've released on social media, so we'll be looking for that. That'll add another element of immersion for sure. I dare say it'll be the best damage model in any racing sim once we do eventually get it, but again, incremental changes, that's what iRacing's game has been from day one, and this is yet another one, and it adds to that authenticity, which I think we all very much appreciate. Start finish now. Driving slowly has become a very different type of challenge now. Very, very nice. You still have a lockout on neutral, so you can't inadvertently select neutral if you're out on track and you're at speed, but as soon as you come down to a low enough speed, you can select neutral. And then just pulling away as you would in a road car for the most part. Of course, every car is going to have different characteristics in terms of the bite point and things like that, but now you've actually got to be cognizant of all of that. It's really, really cool. In this car, you've got a launch limit, which you can adjust in a series of steps, so that could help you on race start. For example, I can go to step 6 on the launch limit, and that's basically full red line. If I go to step 1 on the launch limit, basically the pit lane speed limiter again. But things like that, again, they have more relevance now that you actually have a penalty for if you get it wrong. So again, it requires a little bit more practice, requires a little bit more preparation, particularly for the race start. It's really, really cool. Very excited when I read that iRacing was going to be including this feature, because obviously, let's say we do everything right per the book, the lights go out, and you bog down off the start like that. That's definitely not going to help, or if you completely get it wrong. See what I mean? Yeah. So you can really get yourself into a whole bunch of trouble very, very quickly if you just mess up the start, because you don't want that to happen. That is utter disaster. So really, that is what iRacing has done. It's really cool. I'm really happy that they have finally given us the ability to stall the engine, because yes, stalling in real life, it happens and it's embarrassing, and in a race situation it's disastrous, and you can finally emulate that here in iRacing. Very, very, very cool. And as you can see now, because this car doesn't have an onboard starter, I am completely dead. So yeah. But anyway, that's all I really wanted to show you today. Ferrari Man 601 saying thank you very much for watching, and of course, we will see you soon.